The old story of an acre per cow for good pasture is getting to be a joke. Even the range stockman who figured on 10 acres per head is getting a glimpse at a new set of figures, and some of these are rather hard to realize. These figures are all true and can be verified in case after case, and it's being done by taking the pasture to the cows. This practice got its real start in California, where high-priced irrigated and fertilized land was planted to grass and legumes for dairy cattle. The problem of turning the cows loose in this kind of pasture was manifold. The stock destroyed more than they ate. A weed patch was left untouched, and the patches where droppings occurred were likewise left to bunch up. Hoofs punched holes in the irrigated ground, and a pasture soon became a messy-looking field. So they've started bringing the pasture to the cows. True, this practice is scattered yet, but the mere fact that it started is something to think about. Let's take a look at a few examples taken in different parts of the country and see for ourselves just what is happening. Herbert Williams of Wakona, Minnesota, has been working this plan for 3 years, so he should speak with some authority on the subject. Well, in 3 years' experience, he found that there is about twice the feed available to the same number of cattle. Williams cuts the pasture so that it can wilt, then picks it up and loads it into a wagon box especially built for feeding. This box is 11 feet long, 5 feet wide, and 18 inches high. A fill makes a day's feed for his herd. He has 2 feeding lots, one of which is his barnyard. The other is a wooded area nearby which allows the stock to get shade on hot days. All in all, he figures on a 50% saving on his feed bill, and he knows that there is a definite increase in his milk production as well. Last July, Harold Hintz, a farmer living 2.5 miles east of Denison, Iowa, bought 44 head of white-faced Herefords from the drought-stricken area of southwest Nebraska. He realized the cattle were thin and badly out of condition. He built a series of open feeding troughs and placed them in the barnyard area. After breakfast each morning, he drives his WD tractor, forage harvester, and a standard wagon into the field. He fills the wagon 3/4 full of chopped mixture. It takes him about 10 minutes using a grass cutter attachment. He then drives into the feeding lot where he fills the troughs with half his load. The cattle really go for that fresh pasture too, sometimes eating for 3 hours. Harold adds a little dry hay to the silage. He believes this aids digestion and prevents bloat. The most remarkable features of this new feeding plan are the healthy condition of the stock and the feed savings. His cattle look trim. There is no doubt in his mind that the new program is a workable solution to the problem. Harold believes he is getting a lot more feed off a pasture by chopping as against the straight grazing method. He admits the program is immature, and he is looking forward to many improvements. This California grower found the answer to his feeding problem simple and easy. First of all, he secured a good forage harvester, one that worked regardless of the crop and could be adjusted to meet all conditions. He secured a wagon that unloaded itself at the desired speed so that proper feeding could be maintained at all times. The use of this type of equipment is expensive and could be considered only by a big operator. His cattle look well fed and in good shape, and his milk production tells a story that cannot be ignored. The Valley Gold Dairy Farm in Albuquerque, New Mexico, works a plan of their own which follows this scheme very closely. They have 500 acres under irrigation from the Rio Grande and 600 head of cattle to feed throughout the year. They operate a somewhat similar scheme from the middle of May to the middle of October, getting about 5 cuttings per year. They cut with a standard forage harvester, loading into stock wagons which are delivered into a central area ready for unloading, where they are converted into horse-drawn wagons for feeding purposes and arranged so that they can feed throughout the day, keeping the rotation correct at all times. The stock thrive on it and look healthy. Of course, looks mean nothing without results, and these results are showing up daily, both in milk and butterfat production. Iowa State College, through their Western Iowa station, did a series of tests on this grass feeding program. They simply cut each day's given amount of grass or grass mixture and bring it to the feeding area, where it is weighed up accurately so there is no guesswork. It is strictly a business proposition all the way. Different mixtures are fed to the different stock, and an accurate check is made. Of course, the average stockman could not afford to go to all this trouble. But this is a fact-finding board, first, last, and all the time. There is no doubt their figures will prove the many advantages of the plan. Louis Geronimi, a farmer living near Rosemont, Minnesota, adopted portable feeding this summer, aided and abetted by his son Don. They instituted an entirely new feeding practice by constructing a new and efficient feeding wagon, which can be hauled behind their forage harvester. Every morning and evening while milking is in progress, Don chops a load of forage. It takes him about 15 minutes, after which he drives it into the feeding lot. Practice tells him how full to make the wagon, and that is the whole story. Geronimi gets up to twice as much feed from a given area. More versatility results in the use of his fields since he requires no fences. This dry lot feeding routine is giving him better and more uniform production of milk, even in the fall months. His whole herd is averaging better than 35 pounds, in spite of the fact that 15 head of his stock were first calf heifers, so his program must be right. Notice that the cutting was done in strips. This was done for a purpose. He had more feed than he needed, so he left strips on the chance that seed would set. The result was that seed set exceptionally well and yielded a good crop on the strips not used for feed. Of course, an all-crop harvester moved in to do this job in a hurry and turned out an excellent quality of seed. At Mab Acres, Dr. M.C. Borman at Northlake, Wisconsin, with Mr. C. Browning as manager, have a somewhat similar story to tell. They cut their pasture requirements from 40 acres to 14 acres during the past year, which was very dry and anything but a good year. Mr. Browning fenced a 4-acre plot for a feedlot, building permanent bunks on one side of the lot. He loads into a truck which is hauled behind his forage harvester until a sufficient load is accumulated. It is then unhitched and driven to the feedlot, where the self-unloading feature of the truck is put into effect. The load is then quickly delivered to the stock, which is ready and waiting. This is accomplished twice a day. His 42 head of Holsteins look healthy and well-fed. They have had no bloat and no scours. His milk production has been normal all season. His mixture of brome, ladino, and alfalfa has worked out very satisfactorily. His excess grass is put in a trench silo for winter feeding that keeps his milk production up all winter. We take you now to Ed Carter and Sons of Rockton, Illinois. They farm 240 acres, only partially used for dairying. They milk 44 cows and feed them in the new-fashioned way. This pasture is cut each day and brought into a permanent feedlot. The mixtures vary with the weather and the time of the year. Sudan grass is grown in case the clover mixture fails in dry times. The feedlot consists of about 8 acres. The feeding is varied each day. This is accomplished by using 2 wagons of home manufacture which act as movable feedlots. They can be moved any place in the feedlot, utilizing a fresh stand every day. This keeps the manure spread and prevents soggy grounds. There are hundreds of other examples of this new feeding program from Florida to California. It's finding its place. Reports vary from 10 cows to the acre, as in a Florida case, to 2 cows to the acre in central Illinois. But they are all possible and all without exception cite improvement. The plan is new and it's varied as yet, but it's growing stronger every year. Different wagons and different methods of feeding but all with the same end in view. One of the noticeable things about the whole program is the total absence of sickness of every kind: scours, bloat, milk fever. In fact, there seems to be a lack of all common failures. The program is still in the development stage. More and more stockmen are putting it into practice, and others have shown a keen interest in it. It is growing by leaps and bounds, and may finally emerge as a standard method for all to use.